And welcome to episode 7 of the Behind the Beacon podcast. I'm your host, Seth Orensky. Before our first interview, I want to remind all of our student athletes that all medical paperwork is due by next Thursday, November 5th. If you don't fill out and submit your paperwork, you can't participate in virtual workouts with athletic performance coach Jeff Ebbs. If you have any questions, please contact Alexa Capione. Tomorrow, Wednesday, November 28th, Athletics is hosting another student-athlete game night. The game night will be hosted on the Beacon's Athletics Discord channel at 7:30 p.m. Please email me, seth.orensky@umb.edu, for more details. Our first guest this week is a Beacon legend. In just 2 years of running track and field at UMass Boston, Wadeline Jonathas rewrote both the UMass Boston and the NCAA record books. The Daugherty Memorial High School grad tied an NCAA Division III record by winning 9 individual national championships and helped the Beacons win both the 2018 indoor and outdoor NCAA national titles. After spending 2 years as a Beacon, Wadeline transferred to Division I University of South Carolina before the 2019 season. She went on to win a pair of national championships with the Gamecocks as a junior before turning pro in December of 2019. I spoke to Wadeline about her time as a Beacon and a Gamecock, what it's like to be a professional, and how her training for the Olympics has changed due to the pandemic. I'm joined by former UMass Boston women's track and field national champion Wadeline Jonathas. Wadeline, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good, thank you, Seth.
Wadeline, I want to talk first about the end of your UMass Boston career. As a sophomore, you won both the indoor and outdoor track national championships all the time while you were being, if not fully recruited, certainly getting some real press from Division I schools who were looking to see if you would join them. What did it mean to finish, especially with your teammates who did a great job, to finish on top, to win, especially that second national championship where it was so close and you guys needed a point in that final relay, to go out on top as a Beacon?
I think it was really an emotional moment for all of us. And I think coming from indoor and winning, and I think indoor people probably think, okay, they just got lucky. But I think coming from outdoor and doing it again with more of the team together with the relay team, and, we had 2 people competing in individual event, I think that just made it more official that we actually worked for the championship, and it was not luck, it was just hard work.
What was that moment like? You became the first athlete in program history to get 5 individual All-American honors at a single meet. It had to be exhausting, but it also had to be gratifying doing it as an entire group and also proving that indoors wasn't a fluke.
It meant a great deal. I think the thing I took away from it was the support system that I had there, the coaches and my other teammates. And I think, as hard as it was, I think it was something that needed to be done. And sometimes we just got to put our emotions aside and our egos and then just go out there and do it for the team.
You were looked at by a lot of schools that are tremendous in track, and you chose South Carolina. What was the most difficult part of the transition from Division III to Division I?
I'm pretty sure you already know that, but the heat I couldn't deal with the heat. It was just something, it wasn't even the training at that point. I just couldn't deal with it. And it was really hard adjusting to it. But I think over time, I learned to hydrate more, staying more in the shade and always having something to cover myself up with. I think that was probably the biggest thing. But apart from that, the training is actually very different, and having less time on my hands, I didn't have, my schedule wasn't as open as it used to be. And it's like every hour of the day I was scheduled to do something different.
Was there a moment where it clicked at Division I where you recognized that, okay, I know I'm coming from Division III, but I can compete with these people. I think that I can really go out there and, again, compete for a national championship?
I feel like I've always known I was one of these people out there, one of those Division I athletes, and I think that's why I made the move. Because if I didn't see myself to be one of them, I would have never made the move. I never doubted myself, but definitely there were some challenges coming on because winning was much harder. It's like there wasn't much winning going on, but I think that just made it much, it made it much better when I finally get the win, and every time I improve, I knew it was genuine.
I want to talk about your wins. You won the 4x4 relay at indoors and the 400-meter championship at outdoors at South Carolina. Both, I believe both. I know the relay you came from behind by a significant margin. As someone who is not very fast and has never come from behind to beat someone in a race, what were those moments like? You're on ESPN, everybody is watching, and I mean, you weren't coming back from a small margin. You had to make up some significant ground to win those national championships.
Those moments were great because the girls are fast. Those are like some of the fastest girls I've ever competed against, and that was in my first year, you know. But I wasn't thinking about who was watching, if I was on TV or not. Those things were not relevant to me at that time, and the only thing that were relevant to me was that I had to take one for the team, and I think I was very eager to do it because I did not place in the open four, so that was my chance to redeem myself, and I think it was the perfect timing, and I feel like the girls were counting on me as well as the coaches in our school. They were counting on me to finish strong. And I gotta say, I've had a lot of great practices. The entire year really to be able to come back from the back to get to the front. It wasn't something that just happened out of nowhere, but I had been training towards it throughout the year to get there.
A couple weeks later, you go to the U.S. qualifications for the World's team. You finish third in the 400. You make the U.S. national team. What did that mean to you? Growing up in Haiti, you could have competed for the Haitian national team at a younger age. You said, I want to compete for the U.S. And I think it's 2 years later, maybe just a little over 2 years later, you've made the U.S. senior national team. You're competing at a world championship. What is that feeling?
I think it's a happy feeling, you know, something you've always dreamed of for it to actually happen in a short amount of time. Because I think I've always wanted to be where I'm at, but I didn't know how long it was going to take. Um, it was pretty amazing. Being the underdog and to making the team. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming, and I think that was probably like the cherry on top for me.
You go to Doha for the Worlds. You're the anchor leg of the 4x4. What was the conversation like with your coaches, with your teammates? The anchor leg is typically the fastest, the most important leg, and you win gold. What was that entire experience like, competing with some of the best in the world, and then being on the last straightaway? I don't remember if you ever looked back, but you had a significant lead, and knowing that you were racing to a gold medal at a World Nationals.
It was pretty great. I think I had the lead because everyone actually did their part. You know, they didn't wait on me. I think that that's like probably one of the biggest difference competing on a national level, well, international level, I should say, is that everyone go out there and they run their leg, and everyone is just doing their part to make sure that I'm okay. So it was pretty great. I think the biggest concern that my coaches had was that I mean, I did anchor. Um, my first year at South Carolina, the whole year, but the girls were not as fast as those girls were on the pro circuit. And I think my biggest thing was getting out. I was not able to get out as fast enough compared to how I got out in college. And other than that, it was pretty great. You know, it's a learning experience, and we definitely learned from it.
Did that week at Doha, where you won gold with the relay team and also finished fourth with the 400-meter team, influence your decision at all to forego your senior season as a collegiate student athlete and go pro? Or did you kind of already have an inkling of that? When did your mindset change to recognize, I need to just put all my focus on this?
I mean, I think throughout the whole year, people have been telling me, okay, why would it take for you to go pro? And I could remember telling certain people I wouldn't go professional until I run that 49, because I do set certain goals for myself. And if I don't hit those goals, then I don't think I was deserved. I wasn't deserving of going pro. So I think once I hit that time, it was after the final of the 400. And I think I had that conversation with my coach. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to go professionals. And I'd like you to continue to be my coach. But it wasn't, but that didn't happen after the winning the gold. That was something that happened after my individual event. I think the gold was something that was just I can't explain it. It felt pretty great to get it, but I don't think that's what made my mind of going pro.
You stayed at South Carolina, obviously partially for the coaching, but also you specifically said you wanted to finish your degree. Why was that so important for you to finish what you started and to get that degree while also training for the Olympics?
I mean, to start, I think I've put a lot of sweat into school. I think I'm like very hardworking, and I always like to get my work done on time. And it's always been about school first, and then being an athlete. Obviously, kind of now like the table was kind of a bit turned. So since I'm like professional, so I kind of have to go being an athlete a little bit first. But I've come so close, and I only had 1 year to go, and I did not want to take a break because I knew the instant I stopped, it would be much harder for me to get back into it. But with the Olympics here and all that, I wanted to use the stress of school to distract me from, the other stress out there. So to me, it's a really great pro, having something distracting.
What was the beginning of the 2020 pro circuit like? You ran the fastest time in the world, albeit a shortened season on Valentine's Day. What was that like participating as a pro versus a college athlete? Is there any difference there in terms of your mindset or maybe the competition?
No, I think the biggest change I had was coming into D1, but after that, I think the competitions every week kind of made being a professional, even competing with other professionals, just feels like normal because the athletes here at D1, they're technically professionals, so it was just something normal to me. I think at that time I had already gotten used to it, and I think that's why I had like a much better indoor season as my during my first professional year than I did during my first year in college.
I know it wasn't a full season, but is there a little bit of pride knowing you have the fastest 400 time in the world this year?
I don't think I have. I wouldn't say pride because I just think it's part of the journey. But I don't think about it. It's not something that I'm like, oh yeah, I had the fastest time this year. But it's something it's in the back of my head. I celebrate every little victory, but I just don't hang on to them.
What was How has the pandemic affected you? Obviously, the Olympics were supposed to be this year. You have the seventh fastest time amongst active runners in the world, second amongst U.S. athletes. So, not to say you were a shoo-in for the U.S. national team, because it's never, and nobody's a shoo-in. But what did it mean to all of a sudden have that event that you've been working towards for maybe the last 5 years, maybe the last 2 years? I don't know where your mindset was, but to see that go away, and how do you keep the focus? How do you keep training as hard as you would have, knowing that you don't have a chance to go after that first Olympics, at least this year?
Well, yeah, my thing, I don't look at things in a negative manner. I always look at things on the positive side and the glass half full. So when the got canceled, my coach and I, we still did finish the training cycles and getting ready for Europe too when that came into play. So we kept training. We did not let that distract us, and that we do believe it's probably because I needed an extra year or something like that to get used to the outdoor professional life. So I don't think it affected me at all. I mean, obviously, it kind of did, but I wasn't the only one going into it. A lot of people were going into it, and I think it'd be very selfish for me to be only thinking about myself in that time. And we were all on the same boat, really, so we could only make the best out of the situation as possible.
Always keeping things positive. Wadi, my last question is, you didn't start running track until you were 16 years old. It's not that long ago since you were 16. How do you wrap your mind around how far you've come in the last, I believe, 5 years, maybe 6 years?
About, um, I don't think I really ever wrapped my mind around it. But the only thing is that I know when I want something, I always go out there and I go for it. I don't just sit and just dream. I make it happen. And as much as 6 years was only just yesterday, and I can't even answer that question. It's just I wouldn't put like I wouldn't say the time is a big. I can't even answer that question really. It's just I think it's just a miracle. I think that's the answer. It's just a miracle.
Well, Wadeline, thank you so much for your time and for telling us a little bit more about your story. It's awesome. I know you only spent 2 of your 4 years as a Beacon, but we are certainly all rooting for you and all excited to hopefully see you on the Olympic stage next summer.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you for having me.
That was my interview with Wadeline Jonathas. She is still working towards the 2021 Olympics in Tokyo that are scheduled to start on July 23rd, 2021. To make the USA team, Wadeline will compete at the U.S. Olympic Trials in Eugene, Oregon from June 18th to June 27th next year. Before we get to our next interview, I'd like to dig a little deeper on one of the On This Date posts from this past week. On October 27, 2007, volleyball's Kate White put together one of the most impressive performances in program history. The sophomore posted a program record 29 kills in a 3-2 match win over conference foe Rhode Island College. A deeper dive into the box score and the schedule shows just how impressive her day was. The match against the Anchor Women was part of a tri-match on a Saturday afternoon. In the first match of the day, White recorded a team-high 12 kills on 25 swings in a 3-0 loss to Western Connecticut State University. She came right back and put up a line of 29 kills, 7 digs, 1 ace, and a .400 hitting percentage in the win over Rick. White needed only 50 swings to get the 29 kills and had just 9 attack errors in the match. After losing the first 2 sets, 30-28 and 30-24, White and the Beacons roared back to win the final 3 sets 30-25, 32-30, and 15-11 to clinch back-to-back winning seasons for the first time in volleyball program history. Now let's turn to our second guest. Baseball's new assistant coach, Jacqui Reynolds, has an incredible story. The Southern New Hampshire University alum didn't play organized softball until high school, before walking on to the Penman's D2 softball team. After a torn ACL her freshman year ended her career, Jacqui graduated early and her life took a huge turn when she attended the Boston Red Sox first ever fantasy camp for women. Her experience at the Red Sox fantasy camp totally changed her life and has set her on a course where she not only has started playing baseball for the first time, but has also started coaching it. We discussed her journey to playing baseball the first time, her experience with the game over the past 5 years, and her coaching views. I'm joined by UMass Boston Baseball's newest assistant coach, Jacqui Reynolds. Jacqui, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Great. Jacqui, I want to talk about first your experience with baseball growing up. Despite the fact that you have a lot of experience around the game and now playing the game, you didn't really get a chance to play organized baseball as a kid. Can you talk about your playing experience as a kid and kind of what it was like where the boys could go off and play organized baseball, but you weren't given that same opportunity?
I was really friendly with a bunch of my neighborhood friends and stuff, and we would always be around, playing any sport that we could, street hockey, soccer. We made up a game with a tennis racket where you had to hit a home run, and it was like way down the street. And, my brother played. He's younger than me. We would always play catch in our backyard. There's a set of trees and stuff, and we would try to rob home runs and everything. So we always hit a ball in our hand or a glove. We did anything that we could to stay active. It was always the neighborhood kids, and they would go off and they would go play their games, and I would still be home, and I would wait for them to get back so we could keep on going and play anything that we could too. My brother, he would go off to his games and stuff, and I would go with him, and I would go so I could watch. I just wanted to be there, and I wanted to see what the game was all about. And I got to sit on the bench a couple times and watch them play, and I always dreamed about getting over the lines and going in and playing.
You didn't really play softball until high school, and it was only because people begged you to play. Can you talk about that experience and maybe how that helped you get into women's baseball after college?
I got into softball basically for a favor. The freshman coach, who was also my gym teacher at the time, kept on saying, "Hey, there's going to be a freshman team. Do you want to play?" And I kept on being like, not really. Like, I didn't want to really play sports in high school. I don't know why, but I just didn't. She was like, "Come on, we need a couple more players, to have a team." And I was like, all right, fine. Like, yeah, I'll play. And, it kind of took off from there. I played my freshman year. Then, the varsity coach was like, "Hey, we want you to play." And I was just kind of like, I played last season as a favor. I didn't want to really play anymore. I didn't really, it's not that I didn't like it. It was just not baseball. because that's all I wanted to do was just play baseball. And, playing softball, it was just like, it's not baseball. Like, it just doesn't do anything for me. Like, they were like, no, you should play. And I was like, all right, I'll play, type of thing. And then, so I ended up playing. That was my sophomore year. Played my junior year and my senior year.
You walked on to the Southern New Hampshire softball team, a D2 program, but you tore your ACL and that kind of cut your career short. But it maybe helped you in the end because you graduated early, and because of that, you got a really special graduation gift. Can you talk about how that worked out and how it was really your first foray into women's baseball?
You never think that tearing your ACL would ever turn out to be a good thing. Because if I didn't tear my ACL freshman year, my life would totally be different, and I don't even know if I would be in baseball right now. It's just amazing to think about, like, what would happen if I didn't. But yeah, so tearing my ACL made me realize that, I didn't want to be in college all that long. It just kind of felt weird because I was like, oh, I'm this, college athlete type of person, and now I'm not. I also graduated early, and, I did that with 2 majors, and I was just like, all right, let's do this. And, I graduated with a graphic design degree and a sports management degree. So, 2 different majors, but, I made it work, and I took a bunch of online classes, and I did extra work. I took like 6 or 7 classes, like, at the same time, just so I could do that. But it definitely worked out in the long run because, I had my tweet notifications on for the Red Sox. So I would always get updated on what they post. And then there was one tweet that stuck out to me, and it was a photo of a woman playing baseball at JetBlue Park, and it just happens that they were doing a women's fantasy camp. So it was the first year that they were going to do it. They probably got the idea from their regular fantasy camp. A couple girls have been doing it, and they were like, all right, let's do a full blown out women's baseball camp. And I was like, I'm totally signing up for this. Like, there is no way that I'm not doing it. And I was like, I brought up the idea to my mom, and I was like, hey, can I have this for my college graduation gift? And you can even apply it into my birthday gift. Like, I just want to go. Like, I don't, however you can figure out how I can go, I'm going to go. And she was like, all right, we'll think about it. And then they were like, all right, you can do it. It cost a lot of money. So I was like, perfect. Like, this is awesome. Like, thank you guys. So I ended up getting to go, which was an experience. It was so fun. Like, I don't know how to describe what the feeling of putting on an actual baseball uniform and going out and playing is. Like, it's just incredible. And it made it so much better that I was with ex-Red Sox players. Like, Trot Nixon, Brian Daubach, Alan Embry, like, all those guys that I watched win a championship. And now I'm getting coached by them. That whole experience was awesome. And, like, now I'm, like, friends with a couple of them. And I can, text them up and be like, hey, I have a quick question. Like, can you answer this for me? And they'll do it for me, like, no problem. But, yeah, it was so great. Like, the talent there was anywhere from, like, never picked up a glove before, like, didn't even know how to put one on, to, like, played baseball before. Like, there's a couple girls that, like, had played before and played on women's teams. And so, like, I was there, and, I got to experience everything there. It was so cool just to be able to be like, hey, I just played baseball. Like, for the first time in my life, I got to say that. And, taking it there, and now it's 2020, and they were just in their 5th year this year, and, I've been going every year. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, and it turned into, a 5-year thing.
You went from your first fantasy camp to a tryout for the U.S. women's national team, which seems like a big step, but it also probably pushed you even further into diving into baseball. Can you talk about that experience as not a total novice, but as someone who really hadn't played the game of baseball that much with the first camp, and how you've kind of pushed yourself into a player who's actually made the 40-man roster over the past couple of years?
Me and another girl who did the fantasy camp were like, hey, we should do this and just go and see how it is. And I was like, I'm down. So we drove to North Carolina for the open tryout and just tried out and stuff. It was crazy. It was, so many people down there. I didn't realize like how many people actually played women's baseball, and it was just like, oh my god, there's a lot of people here. Like, I thought that there was going to be like maybe 40 people tops, and there was like over 80, and I was just like, oh, okay. And at that point, I've never played like an actual game of baseball. And it was cool. It was a fun experience. I had, a couple of veterans from the USA team on my like open team, and I would talk to them, just like starting conversations, and it was just like, oh, you're like kind of famous, like starstruck. Like, I never felt that way before, and I was just kind of like, okay, like this is cool. I tried out for as an outfielder because I played outfield my whole life with softball, and then there was so many outfielders. There was, you had the girls that were on Team USA already, and they kind of had their group of like who they talked to, and then there was other people that were there, and you kind of talked in the lines, and it was just like, okay, like a lot of these people have done stuff. Like a lot of them some of them were like Division I softball players, and like you watch the Division I softball players on TV, and you're like, all right, these girls are good. And like it was the same thing there. It was like they just went from softball to baseball, or baseball to softball, and back to baseball. So it was just an awesome experience to watch just like good players play. So I was really shocked at like the talent, like because I didn't know really much. I only saw what was at the women's fantasy camp.
With that, you've become much more of a baseball player. You've even played on a team that is mostly men. Why did you go into coaching? What pushed you into coaching? And specifically, you started as a softball assistant coach. What pushed you to make the move to go for it and become a baseball coach for boys?
I started coaching softball with my old high school. Me and the head coach we developed a good relationship where it was like she would text me and ask me questions as well. At one time, she like mentioned, hey, we need somebody to come do the book and help out. And I was at school at the time. So I was like, yeah, I can come down and stuff. I'm only 45 minutes away. I can come down, like, and help out. And I did that. And then because I graduated early, I got that opportunity to coach full time with the team. So I got to go to the practices and the games, and I got to, instruct some hitting and work with the fielders and everything. And, it turned into from going from softball, and it was like, all right, well, now I'm playing baseball, and I kind of want to get into baseball coaching. And my first experience with that was I was working at a baseball facility who had an AAU program, and they kind of reached out to me and was like, hey, you ever thought about coaching baseball? And I was like, I mean, yeah. And they were like, so do you want to help out? We need an assistant coach for our 13s team. And I was like, 13-year-old boys. That's going to be interesting. I don't know how they're going to react. I don't know how their parents are going to react, but let's go for it. And, it turned out to be all right. Like, my worries went away easily. Like, the parents all loved me and, like, would always ask me questions. They would always make sure that I had water and stuff. And they were like, do you want me to go to Dunkin's for you? And I'm like, oh, you guys know the way to my heart. Yes, I'll have Dunkin's. Like, and they would go and get back, and we would have double headers every weekend, and it was great. And the players, really, there wasn't really any issues with the players. They all like respected me as a coach, and it didn't make a difference whether if I was a woman coach or a male coach to them. So that was the great thing about that. And then when I was coaching softball in high school for a couple years, I found something on Indeed that was that Newton South was looking for a assistant coach for their varsity team for baseball. And I was like, do I apply for it? And, I'm sitting there looking at it, start filling out the application, cancel that. And I was like, I don't think that, maybe that might not be a good fit because I didn't know about the high school scene. For boys anyways, I know high school scene for girls, and I was just like, and then I clicked back on it, and I was like, let's just do it anyways. And I filled out the application, wrote down everything, and then applied for it. And wasn't expecting anything out of it, was just like, kind of did it for fun. And then I get an email back, and it was, hey, I want to meet you. I want to see what you got. And I was like, I was kind of shocked. I was just looking at it. I was like, all right, is this a joke? Like, did someone like fake email this at me right now? Because I told a couple people that I did it, and I was like, all right, who made the fake email? And I was like, nope, I guess that's real. It had, the New and South stuff on it. All right, let's go meet him. And so we met like on a Tuesday afternoon at a restaurant, had a great conversation just about coaching and everything and what he was looking for. And I was just like, all right, cool. And he was like, I want to hire you. And I was like, all right, perfect. Like, let's go. And so I did, that for a season in 2019, and we had a good season. The team wasn't that great the year before. They got blown out all the time and just never hit. And it was just, they needed somebody to get in there and like help them with their hitting. So I did that. Threw BP to them. My proudest moment there was definitely, getting the captains on my side. And it was like the best feeling ever when I'm in the tryout throwing BP. And, one of the captains comes up to me and goes, can you throw BP for the rest of the year for us? And I was sitting like kind of laughing. I was like, why? And he goes, that's the best BP I ever had. Like, can we make sure that you're the one throwing BP? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, let me talk to the coach and we'll see if we can do that. Because I'm fine with throwing BP. I'll throw it all day. And I was like, all right, let's go. They didn't have the greatest season, but it was a much different season from the year before. So it definitely helped out going there. That's the one thing you want as a coach is seeing improvement from the last year.
As a female in baseball, but also as a young coach, you kind of have to deal with two, not barriers, but two potential stumbling blocks with getting accepted with a new team. Has it always been easy to gain the trust on the boys' side, or have you kind of had to find some ways to kind of gain that confidence in terms of feeling like you're a part of the group right away?
It depends. It depends on the team, because there's always going to be teams that no matter what gender or age you are, there's always going to be that one kid that just doesn't trust the coach all the way. And there's always that one kid. Like, it's anywhere you go, like, not every single player is going to like their coach. And I kind of go in as, like, thinking that way anyways. It's like, all I want to do is make sure that, I can do my best to make sure that the kids trust me. And I think, I do a pretty good job of that. When you get messages from parents about your coaching and it's all positive, that's when you're doing something right. Like, I always say that I always want to be the coach that I would have loved playing for. So if, I look at my coaching style and I don't like it as a player, I need to change it, type of thing. And I feel like that's how all coaching should be, no matter, what sport, where you're at, like what level. If you're not enjoying your own coaching style, you need to change it. It makes no sense to, coach if your players aren't enjoying your coaching style, because that, makes the team more successful is when they trust you. If they don't trust you at all, like, you're not going to be successful. The team's not going to be fun. The players and stuff might actually quit. Like, that's the worst thing that you want as a coach, is having players quit because of your coaching style. It didn't even matter what sport I, coached. Like, if I coached something else, like, I don't know, soccer, like, it doesn't, like, girls and boys both played soccer. Like, it wouldn't matter. Like, when you're younger and you play, 10U soccer with your town league, some of the dads are coaches, some of the moms are coaches. When you're that young, you don't even think about that. And I don't know, why we think about it that way in baseball, because women play baseball and guys play baseball. So, both people, like, they both play. Anybody can coach, right? It doesn't matter what your gender is or what your age is. It's all about experience. And the more experience you have makes you a better coach. It doesn't matter if you're male or female.
Jacqui, it was great getting to know only a part of your story. I know there's a lot more to dig into that I wish we had time for. Coach Agarwal told me that on one of the walls in your house you have 400 signed baseballs. So I'd love to hear more about that at another time. I'm sure our fans and baseball players would as well. Thank you so much for your time and insight into your story.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
That was my interview with baseball assistant coach Jacqui Reynolds. Reynolds was hired this fall and will work with the Beacon's hitters and outfielders. That's all for episode 7 of the Behind the Beacon podcast. Make sure to tune in next week.